Hello everyone, ready to watch a video and procrastinate with slightly educational content? That's what I thought. I'm also a fan of idleness. In fact, there is nothing as gratifying as watching a good movie. So much that making movies and learn more about them has been a big interest of mine. And in this channel I will be making some movie reviews of some movies that I have seen. It is estimated that 500,000 movies, likely more, have been made in all history of mankind. So there's definitely a lot of content to cover here. And the movie I will talk about today is The Martian. You remember The Martian? It's a cool sci-fi movie from 5 years ago. The movie hasn't changed a bit since then, but is likely buried in all of the dust that has settled in the years that followed.
He's not gonna decompose, you know. He's gonna be up there forever.
Meteorology estimates that he'll be covered in sand from normal weather activity within a year. If you have seen The Martian, I recommend you to watch it again. It's really refreshing to watch it after a few years. If you haven't, then watch it, and don't watch this video until you have. Needless to say, this will have spoilers, so spoiler alert. But for those who are too lazy to have to remember the movie again, or worry about having to watch the movie at all, and are immune to the adverse side effects of spoilers, then I believe it is healthy to tell a bit of what Martian is about. The Martian is not a movie about alien beings living on Mars. I mean, it's about an Earthling living on Mars, so it's technically an alien in Mars' point of view. It is also not a spin-off movie of the DC Comics superhero character the Martian Manhunter. However, The Martian is indeed a superhero movie. It's about a guy on Mars who is struck by a superstorm, gets injured and saved by his super blood, he has plant-based superpowers, becomes the fastest man in the history of space travel, and he flies like Iron Man. Seriously, The Martian is the story that Avengers Endgame could have been, where Iron Man is stranded away from Earth and his only company is a robot. The Martian is a 2015 movie, directed and produced by Ridley Scott, the same guy who directed awesome movies like Alien, Blade Runner and Gladiator, and less awesome ones, like The Counselor or Exodus Gods and Kings. He returns in form for possibly the best film directed by Scott in the last 10 years. Like any superhero movie, it is based on a book called The Martian, a 2011 novel by Andy Weir, which served as a screenplay adapted by Drew Goddard, the guy who directed Cabin in the Woods and Bad Times at the El Royale. He was supposed to direct The Martian, but he eventually didn't in favor of directing the Sinister Six movie, which never happened. Ridley Scott stepped up to direct the movie, and I gotta say, you see how Ridley contributes to this movie, and Goddard even praises Scott's work, stating he would never be able to do what he did with the movie. The movie was highly praised, was nominated for the Oscars, including for Best Picture, which I think it's a bit too much, and was worked to deliver scientific accuracy, be realistic in many aspects, hopefully promoting public interest in a possible manned mission to Mars, and also helped us rediscover our love for potatoes. There was literally a new species of Australian potato relative that was named after the main character of the movie. So starring in this movie are Jason Bourne, Murphy, a dumb guy, that guy who voices everyone in the Ant-Man movies, One Cannot Simply, Invisible Woman, The Winter Soldier, I told you this was a superhero movie, that weird guy in the Cloverfield Paradox, what a shitty movie that was, a Terminator, Wong, literally, a cat, and another cat, and Chinese people. Now to the details of the story, so that you don't get too confused on what this story is about. So this story is set in the mid-2030s, when the crew of Ares 3 is on Mars hanging out and they discover dirt. This will be important later. And they have been there for 18 days. Suddenly a big-ass storm of super unrealistic proportions threatens to topple the ship, the crew's only ticket to get back to Earth. The crew evacuates, but astronaut Mark Watney, played by Matt Damon, is slapped by the breeze. His suit malfunctions, and because the crew hates him so much, just kidding, they leave him behind to die. They leave Mars and go to the Hermes, which is the big space station on space that they will use to return to Earth. But plot twist, just kidding, that was the whole goddamn reason you went to watch this movie. Mark Watney is fucking alive.
Surprise!
But he has little oxygen. He goes inside the hab, and because he is a superhero, he treats his wound like a boss. The first word he says when he's totally alone on Mars is "fuck," which is a clear sign that he is not allowed to swear when he is with the crew. God damn it, Commander Lewis, give Mark a break. Well, Mark technically says something before that.
Ah!
Yeah, there you go. Superheroes feel pain too. First thing he does, like any survivalist, is make a video diary. Because it's like, Super important to record this. Who knows, maybe someone will make a Hollywood movie out of this. Oh wait. Because he cannot communicate with Earth, you'll have to survive for 4 goddamn years stranded on Mars and reach the next point of destination of the next manned mission, the landing site of the Ares 4, which will be landing 3,200 kilometers away from its current location. However, he doesn't have enough food to survive for 4 years on Mars. Except, he has plant superpowers, aka a PhD in botany, and he starts to survive by filling a whole area with dirt. I told you this was going to be important. He also fills the area with shit and makes water from burning rock and fuel, but he had no burning material, with the notable exception of Jesus Christ himself. The experiment goes boom before it goes yeah, water good. Mark then has the earliest Thanksgiving of that year and starts planting potatoes. He then modifies the rover by putting a goddamn radioactive box to keep him warm, so then he can travel a longer distance into the Ares 4 landing site. He sees the potato plants bloom, which rapidly give you an emotional connection to the plants. This will be important later. Meanwhile, this movie slaps you in the face. Haha, you thought you were going to see a movie just about a guy stranded on Mars. Now you have to know what is going on Earth as well. Goddamn coward. NASA satellite planner Mindy Park, played by Mackenzie Davis, sees pictures of Mars and sees that some equipment has moved since the crew left. Before she calls the History Channel and confirms the false existence of aliens on Mars, she calls people from NASA itself, who know better. Teddy Sanders, the director of NASA, played by Jeff Daniels, after publicly saying that Mark is dead, is forced to recognize that Mark Watney is alive, and that aliens on Mars are fake, to everyone else's shock, as well as his, but he decides not to tell the crew, because that would distract him on space travel. Against him is Mitch Anderson, played by Sean Bean, who believes the crew should know how badly they fucked up. Meanwhile, Mark decides to communicate with Earth thanks to a 1990s robot. No, not that one. That one. The Pathfinder probe, which lost its path in 1997. Then Earthlings start a rudimentary mode of communication with Mark, by pointing the camera towards hexadecimal algorithms, because everyone in this movie is so fucking smart. Later they find a way for Mark to communicate via the rover through written text to Earth. Watney asks for the crew, and they are like, oh shit, so they tell him the crew doesn't know about their survival. And Mark says the most horrific insult in the history of cinema that it was best left off screen. Sanders finally allows Hutcherson to speak to the crew about Mark. Mars mission director Vincent Kapoor, played by Chiwetel Ejiofor, I think that's how you spell it, and GPL director Bruce Ng, played by Benedict Wong. I also think that's how it's spelled. So, these guys prepare a probe that will send food to Mars to help Watney survive until Ares 4 arrival. Meanwhile in Mars, boom, malfunction. The hab airlock depressurizes violently and everything is ruined. Mark is saved by duct tape, and the hab as well, later on. But the most emotional moment of the movie occurs. The potatoes die. This is likely the moment that humanity felt the most heartbroken in regards to potato well-being. Sanders' arrogant ass decides to accelerate the process of the probe prepared by Kapoor and Bruce. Of course, nothing ever went wrong on trying to rush things up. Oh wait, boom! Without his potato friends, Mark commits suicide. Oh wait, that is not that kind of movie. Mark never gives up! Outside of Mars, and outside of Earth, we go to China, where they have been making a super booster. They decide to help NASA and repeat the work they were doing with the probe earlier on. Suddenly, GPL astrodynamicist Rich Burnell, played by none other than Donald Glover, has the groundbreaking idea of using the Chinese booster to resupply the Hermes, who is on its way to Earth, and instead make it go around the Earth and go backwards into Mars and save Mark at the end of the day. Sanders doesn't want to do that, as he thinks it's a dumb idea. Look who's talking. Anderson sneakily sends the plans to the Hermes crew, which unanimously decide to do it, because they are adventurous and recognize a team is weak with just 5 people, it works better with 6. Because they are in space and can do whatever they want, NASA can't do nothing but let them go. Sanders, of course, is angry at Anderson, even though you can't tell from his face. Watney then becomes a pirate.
Oh, run, Morty! That part was true!
And sail with his rover for 90 days into the Ares 4 landing site where his ship has been pre-positioned there. I knew this movie was a love letter for pirates and water-based profession as a whole.
Well, technically Mars would be under maritime.
I know, he explained it to us.
However, the ship is too heavy to be able to go to space and connect with Hermes. He then has to literally remove the controls, the windows, the nose of the ship, and covers the holes with a fucking tarp to make the ship super lightweight, but most importantly, turn Mark into the fastest man in space. But because it's a bit too obvious that a ship with starve for a nose doesn't work, it clearly fails to get to the required speed to get close to the Hermes. Commander Lewis, played by Jessica Chastain, decelerates the Hermes with thrusters. Oh, and a bomb! A fucking bomb on a spaceship to draw the air out of the ship so that it can decelerate! Lewis then sits in the flying chair and goes toward Mark Watney, which is still pretty far away. And because Mark is a superhero, he flies like Iron Man and he propels towards Lewis. Finally connects with the crew, his true family. He then goes to Earth, where he pets a small plant. I assume he later adopts it? I don't know. Seemingly in his very first day on Earth, he does not hesitate to become a space survival teacher. Everyone asked questions, of course. One of them was if he was going to be the space Bear Grylls, but fortunately the movie cuts to the credits before that question is even made. We also jump to 5 years later, where the Ares 5 ship goes to Mars. Martinez, played by Michael Peña, is there, but all other members of Mark's team are on Earth, living their own lives, like they should, because going on Mars after this shit is batshit crazy. I suppose Martinez had to get that cross back. So, whoof! Got yourself refreshed, or do you have to turn the heater on? Not that you should complain, cause this movie clearly has gotta have some hot stuff, if you know what I mean. So you see, there's a lot to like in The Martian. Out of context, it might look like your standard space survival movie. Don't get me wrong, I love space, I have been fascinated by the wonders of the universe for many years myself, and have always enjoyed a movie that explores that. I also love the survival movie genre. Some of my favorite movies are survival stories. I like a good movie where the main character has to literally dig shit to survive. Though The Martian, despite its appearances, is not any space movie, not any survival movie, not any space survival movie. It is actually pretty unique in some aspects. Many survival stories are worried about transmitting a spirit of regret and unpreparedness to the main character. He starts having flashbacks of his past, starts regretting stuff they have done in the past, and learns about the value of life more than that person has before. Mark Watney is not really like that. He doesn't have like a wife or a daughter back on Earth. We don't see any stupid flashbacks to remind us of a motivation to get back to Mars. There's only one obvious motivation for getting out of Mars, which is getting out of Mars. He's also the most professional survivalist I have ever seen in the history of cinema. He sees his problems as problems with solutions. He never gives up, he's pragmatic, heck, he's a fucking scientist. The end of the movie establishes his philosophy, and by extension the philosophy of the entire movie.
Just begin, you do the math, you solve one problem, then you solve the next one, and the next one, and if you solve enough problems, you'll get to come home.
There is nothing hard in life if you get your hands on the work. Mark only survived because he was confident on himself, was realistic, yet at the same time is not lazy and tries to find a solution to everything. He also does not see his survival solely on a selfish standpoint. He believes his survival, if not his death, had he died, would be a contribute to science anyway, and should serve as a lesson for the scientific progress he was standing for. And he states in the movie how much he is okay with that. This is very altruistic, which also makes the survival story pretty unique, and most importantly, it is not a survival story focused just on Mark Watney, it's a survival story where all the many characters of this movie back on Earth, as well as in the Hermes, play a part on. Either it be to save a life or to cooperate for a common goal. But before I get too much in depth on the inner message and themes and my inner interpretation of the movie, I think it's important to talk about the accuracy and the nerd juice that is dripping from its movie. And trust me, it's a lot. So let's
Science the shit out of this.
and get our hands to work on the science. This movie is surprisingly accurate in many aspects. If you read a bit on the production details behind this movie, you'll learn that the movie's script, story, science and other stuff were influenced directly by NASA itself. It was not like the guys who were making this movie searched on Wikipedia and Google in the hopes they would suddenly know everything they needed to make the movie accurate. They talked to actual specialists, and these have been directly influencing the script in certain aspects while inserted in the movie. In a sense, this was important because a good deal of the movie is set on Earth, focusing on fictional people that work on NASA. So who's the best person to figure out how a guy from NASA would act? Well, I suppose you already know the answer. It's amazing, however, how the movie handles scientific aspects, especially in terms of math. They are aware of how costly and how long does it take to make manned missions to Mars, so we really take the scale of the amount of days you have to stay in space for you to travel between Earth and Mars. The movie recognizes how much food Mark would require. It is already made clear how much days does Mark have to live until his food runs out, and how much can he live with the potatoes he grew on the planet. So we as an audience are not left in the dark on how much he requires to live. The movie does not shy out from explaining the science, which makes this movie the longest advertisement for science itself that I have ever seen, other than being an advertisement for NASA as well. In terms of actual scientific facts, like gravity and other stuff, you can take into account most stuff makes sense. Like the Hermes has a rotating ring on it that creates an acceleration similar to that of Earth's. This explains how they can walk there, but stay in zero gravity in the center of the ship and outside of the rotating ring. This is similarly seen in other movies like in Interstellar or Elysium, and even going further back, 2001: A Space Odyssey. A few stuff in the movie are actually inaccurate. Either it be because it would affect the original plot too much, or were just deemed too minor to worry about, or they just didn't know at the time. The most notable inaccuracy is the giant storm that motivates the whole plot of the movie. This sort of gigantic storm could never happen in real life on Mars, because the atmosphere is so thin, the force would never be able to throw an antenna and make a man fly away, or topple a ship for that matter. What the hell happened there? An asteroid blast? I don't know. Other inaccuracies include stuff like the gravity of Mars, which is less than 40% that of the Earth. Fortunately, Ridley Scott was aware of that, but he chose not to change the gravity visually, as it would be a bit too annoying to have it all the time in the movie. What matters is the guys on Mars, okay? The reasoning behind this could also be that the spacesuits are actually heavy enough to make the gravity look like it's Earth-like, though that doesn't explain why the gravity feels like it's the same when he's not with the suit on. Another inaccuracy is the soil. Apparently, Martian soils are toxic for plant and animal life, due to the presence of certain types of salts at concentrations that are not really pleasant for Mark wanting to give to his potatoes. Of course he could just wash the soil with water to remove the salts out, and he kinda does that as the soils gets moistured with the water that is formed, but oh well, it's a movie after all, so I am definitely not angry because of that. But overall this movie plays a very realistic stance, especially in accounts to the cooperation, the efforts, the preoccupation with science, and all the teamwork that's behind the morons on Earth who are trying their best to bring back Mark to Earth. It's literally taking all the brain power of the planet Earth to help Mark make the smartest things ever, like making holes in the roof of a rover and bang a rock on it. Everyone seems to be so smart in this movie. Sometimes it leads to some ridiculous moments, like when everyone has an epiphany and does not share the idea with anyone until it's done.
It's Acidalia Planitia. There's nothing out there except a...
What?
Heck, it would almost be easier if you
You understand I'm your boss, right?
But with all the scientific rigor here, I can't be surprised that people start believing this movie is actually based on a true story. Now for how the movie is constructed. I think this movie is one of the most likable movies that came out back in 2015. It is smartly constructed in terms of story, editing, script, characterization, music, etc. It is very hard to not get attached to the movie, and in general it's easy to follow. There are some moments where, not gonna lie, you get a bit lost as people start explaining sciencey shit as they try solutions and stuff, and then you're suddenly in action with them and it gets a bit confusing for some people who paid less attention. But overall the tone of the plot is so original in terms of avoiding the typical trope of the depressing, low dialogue survival story with just one character to work with, and they instead separate the story between Mars and Earth, almost equally, which attaches us to Mark at the same time it attaches us to the struggles on Earth. This enriches the dialogue, thickens the plot, but maintains a common goal and a common link. Everything converges to the same goal: bring him home. And the movie makes a satisfying conclusion to that. And also, it is a fucking comedy movie. It has Donald Glover, for God's sake. This movie has some serious comedic moments while maintaining seriousness. Mark Watney is such a likable character. He deals his problems with a smile, almost every time. It really helps define his character as a guy who sees his problems as something that has a solution, something that can be done with a dose of creativity, engineering, improvisation and motivation. And you can't get motivation without a good sense of humor and good self-esteem. This is definitely helped by the musical choice, which is tremendous. Not just the original musical compositions for the movie, which are atmospherical and almost give you that weird vibe of misty space exploration themes, like in Alien, also directed by Ridley Scott of course, but the music can also get calmer and simple, to allude to the simplicity and monotony of Mark's current survival situation, in a planet where things have stayed the same for millions and millions of years. Then there's the shake that ass kind of music, because Commander Lewis left all of her ABBAs and Gaynor songs there. It really helps to get a relaxation-like feeling that really aids in entering into the psychology of the character, who thinks these big-ass problems are no big deal if you know what you're doing, get back to work and don't give up. They even got a David Bowie song, which is not the Life on Mars song, but Starman, which works pretty well. But let's turn the beat around.
I'm not gonna turn the beat around. I refuse to.
I think it's time to talk about the message behind the movie's plot. It seems unsurprising by now that this movie is optimistic. In fact, it is super optimistic, so much that it almost represents an utopia. One of the things I realized after watching this movie 5 years after its release is how it shows some values that are very important for the days we are living today. The utopia that this movie transmits is one that unites the entire world to save a man. But it's not really the efforts that are given by the people to save that man that are really the most important. It's the mere fact that nations are joining together. People all over the world gather their intellect for a common goal, a common struggle, an imagined, ideal, global effort to reach to a certain goal. Something that is hardly seen with such intensity nowadays, if not ever. This movie is a dream, where people work together. There's little attempts within the human society in this movie to attempt to screw the fellow human. They are just a whole group of minds trying their very best at solving damn complicated problems. And the entire movie is this journey, a test that forces all these people to try and prove to themselves that we humans are capable of everything if we dream big, think right, and hope for the best every time. It's interesting how every character wants the same thing in this movie. Everyone wants to help each other, and at the end, practically everyone wins. No villains and no one dies in the movie. This is truly not a standard movie. Mark Watney, as I said before, is not shown to have much ties with Earth, like a wife or some kids, I don't know. This helps not distracting the plot too much from the real goal here. Show the audience the combined efforts of this myriad of characters in bringing this man back to Earth. So to stay in alignment with that, Mark's goal is the same as with the other characters. Get the hell out of Mars, instead of having Mark wanting to reunite with a family that does not relate the same to the other characters. This is not Mark's journey. In fact, one could say Mark Watney isn't the main character, even though the whole plot spins around this situation. But the solution to Mark's problem ends up being the solution to every character's problem by extension. Of course, Mark mentions his parents at some point, and he worries about them, but the mention is enough to give Mark enough characterization. We understand what he's going through. We don't necessarily need to visualize Mark going with his parents or whatever, like many survival movies do. This is just one characteristic that I personally enjoyed in the movie, because it contributes to the focus of the movie, and that is very positive. However, Mark's true family isn't really his biological family on Earth. It is clear his true emotional connections lie in his crew. Structurally, this is Mark's true family, and I believe it is very poetic that the crew is the one that brings back Mark from Mars. Not him waiting for RS4, not him having to come out of Mars in another way. Structurally, having Mark's crew being the rescuers is the most logical way the movie had to complete the plot in a way that works best. The beginning of the movie is literally the crew leaving their friend behind. The entire rest of the movie, they do nothing, other than regret for not having saved their friend. Every other character cooperates to save Mark Watney, except them, up until the end. To complete the arc of the characters in the crew, the movie had to make them go back around the Earth and go back to Mars to save Mark. It was their only choice. The movie ends with the Hermes crew saving his friend, solving the problem they thought they would never solve. They literally went back and corrected their own mistakes, ending their own arc. And the movie is finished, and it is so satisfying that most characters in this movie find conclusion here. This is all you could get from a good movie. So yeah, that is it for what I have as a review for this movie. I gotta say, I seriously overlooked many aspects of this movie, and I have seen it many times before. At a different look, it is refreshing to see a movie like this, optimistic about the future, optimistic about the cooperative and empathic potential of humanity, all perfect for the depressing and sometimes shameful moments we are living right now. Surely a lesson to take. So I will be looking forward to make more reviews of more movies and stuff related, futurely, because I really enjoy doing this. So I guess I just have to say peace. Love you all. Bye. Keep it up. See you next. I don't know.